Hello guys, so let's kick it off. It's almost about the right time to start our session about APIs and about modernization. So first of all, welcome. I know it's the last session between this schedule and the bar, but bear with us for a short while before we'll tell you about something about how you can modernize your day-to-day agenda, your day-to-day operations through some APIs and through some extensions. So we'll talk more about it. And let me welcome my colleague Powell here with me. I'm Miroslav Strnad, and we both of us are from Broadcom. And today we will try to tell you more about where you can find APIs, how you can navigate through some authentication challenges, and then together we'll build some small but still quite powerful proof of concept to show you how you can do it, some real life example. And this session is good for everyone who's new to this area, but I think that there will be some quite interesting details for those who are more experienced. I'll give you some time to read it through. Our legal department prepared that very carefully. So,
and I don't think that I think everything that we're going to show today is you can access right now. So I don't even think this applies.
But basically, it says don't trust whatever we say. It might not work, or it might work completely differently than we're talking, and that Broadcom is a lot more powerful than just two of us. But trust us, we tested that several times, and it works.
Hold on, I ain't finished reading it.
Don't worry, no, we have time for everyone. We can print it out and send it to you later. That's an option too.
Yeah, so to set this up a little bit, and then I'll let Mirek talk a little bit about our integration portal, how to access all types of Swagger and API information. But to set our story up today, first, we're looking at this through the eyes of the system programmer, but everything we're going to show today, we're not going to really interact with the mainframe. Everything's going to be external through APIs using Python, right? We're going to stay in VS Code nearly the whole time. I do have a few 3270 screens mixed in here just to show how things turn on and off, but that's it. It's not required to do anything today. At the end of this deck, the code, I'll be using a Jupyter notebook just to run the code in blocks. That code is out on GitHub. There's a link at the end, as well as a few other links about security and things like that you can take back and implement on. So today we're going to run through a little story about a couple of our system programmers, Sherman and Tyler. These guys go back and forth between the 3270 Zowe and access the mainframe via the Zowe CLI interchangeably. We're going to look at a fun little imaginary story where they're managing a few applications through started tasks on the mainframe. And if I was doing this in real life, we'd be looking at pushing some of these requests through a sandbox first, testing them in QA and production, right? And so the idea behind this is that all of these tasks that these guys have to do day to day to maybe pull something down for maintenance, apply these changes maybe to each server or each application individually, push them out into each LPAR individually. We're going to try to automate as much of that as possible so that they don't have to go through the steps of taking the resource offline, applying the maintenance, going through verifying that the maintenance was applied properly, maybe through using some receive or apply, running hold data automatically. And so instead of going through all of these steps one at a time, and then hopefully we get to the end without an error somewhere along the way, we're going to use a few different tools. So we're going to focus on the second part of not necessarily doing internet service retrieval for applying that maintenance, but we're going to look at the second half where we're automating that resource management. So after the maintenance is applied, how do we pull those services up and down? How do we make sure that prerequisite or dependent services are coming up and down at the right times, and using APIs to understand the status of those. And then Behind the scenes, I'm going to cause a little bump in the road. I'm going to take one of our prereqs down to kind of force an error so that we can then automatically send an incident report out to ServiceNow. So we're trying to tie in a few different APIs, not just mainframe APIs, but third-party APIs, tie those all together, and then bring the services back up. So I got a little toolbox. These are some of the things I'm going to be using today. Along the way, if you have questions, you want to stop me, please do. So with that, I want to know how I can get to some of these APIs that we're going to go through today.
Yes. In the beginning, I promised that we'll show you 3 things. The first one was to show you where to find all the APIs, where to learn more about what's available, what's sort of on the menu. And that's why I have this integration portal that I would like to tell you a bit more about and walk you through. And this whole integration portal started with one simple question, like, do you have APIs? Because that's probably the question that you are thinking about now. Do you have APIs, and do I know where to find it? If you tell me yes. And this is basically our answer to your question. So it all runs on a public website. It's something that you can access right now, immediately. You don't need like any VPN, you don't need any login credentials. You don't even need to be a Broadcom customer at all. You can just go there and browse it. And if you're wondering how to get there, here's a QR code that you can easily just snap it and open it on your mobile phone, because it's optimized for all sorts of screens, including your phones. And if you will stop paying attention to this session now, I would be quite happy, because that's our goal, to make you explore it and wonder what you can build with it, what you can achieve with it. So please go and go wild, and play with it. That's the goal. But if you don't want to browse it right now, so just a quick introduction. This is the home page. We try to keep it very simple. There's a tile to export all the APIs, which is something that we will get to in a moment. You will get a link to Mainframe software communities, to Zowe docs, because without Zowe it wouldn't be like full experience, and to Broadcom tech docs, like where you can get the full tech support and documentation that you would expect. So if you go and export APIs, you will get still something simple. We try to just to focus on what's the goal. When we were asking a lot of different customers, typically the answer we got was, give me the code as soon as possible, because that's what I care. So show me something that I can just copy paste, start playing with it, and don't give me your marketing bluff, just focus on the raw stuff. So we're starting here. You can, if you're looking for something specific, the product that you have in mind, so you can just type it and quickly find it. Or you can just browse it if you're like a team leader, or if you want to just share it with your manager or someone who wants to know what Broadcom is offering. Here you get the quick overview, so you will see whether just a Swagger is available, whether there are some use cases, getting started articles, or even some embedded videos. So you can here quickly see everything that we are offering. And once you make your selection, you're getting to the details. So if you were counting, you were just 2 clicks away from getting to Swagger documentation with all APIs that you can run for each different product. We're still keeping the navigation on your left side, so you don't have to go back, but you can quickly switch between products here and there, and it's still kind of simple, which is the main point. If you miss the QR code, here's once more. So now it's one of your last chances to grab it. If not, then just remember that it's integration.mainframe.broadcom.com. And as I mentioned before, if you want to have it in your pocket, so you can bookmark it and use it on your meetings just while looking at your phone and see everything that's available. Even you can still browse the Swagger in usable way. Now, because I was focused so much on that we are using Swagger, but I wanted to check with you, show me your hands, how many of you is used to use Swagger, you know, as a source for documentation. Okay, I see quite a lot of hands up. So then the following question is, obviously, if you didn't raise your hand, so, and you're using something else, can you just shout at me now what else would be, if not Swagger? Is there some other type, some other thing that you prefer? No? Fine. So if you will, you know, get some idea later, you can always stop by. We will be at the bar, so there will be plenty of opportunity to keep discussing it even further. So okay, and now let's get back to our story.
Yeah, so with that, we're gonna be going back and forth between VS Code, which in this case I'm running a Jupyter notebook, which is just an isolated little environment on my machine that I can run one block at a time with Python code. There's a link over there. You can go through that link and you can set up kind of like not just the notebook, but what I have in this environment here. Today, so we're gonna walk through a few things. We're going to go through a few different steps. We're going to connect to a mainframe API, not using the mainframe, but only communicating through REST APIs. We're gonna find the resource that we're looking for. We saw a few resources at the beginning when I was setting the story up a little bit. We'll use those. We're going to perform a state change. So we're gonna take at least one of those resources offline, maybe to apply maintenance or do something else with it. Once we're done with that, we're gonna reverse that. We're gonna try to bring it back up. And that's where I throw a little wrench in there and it doesn't come back up. I take one of our prerequisites offline in the background. In that case, we're gonna report that out to a third party. In this case, I fired up a little developer instance of ServiceNow, a little isolated environment just to play with. And then we're gonna return that resource to its original state before we took it offline. So with something simple like a notebook, a lot of people associate this with data science or doing desktop visualization of that data, running models, etc. I like testing out my APIs this way. It's like that step below Swagger where I can actually play with the data a little bit, transform it some, and maybe even augment it with other sources. So it kind of gives you, along the way, you notice I have some text up here. It allows me to add markdown and code, and that way, as I'm kind of like ideating through this, creating a proof of concept before I create a whole script, I can hand this off to one of my colleagues. They can run through and we can go back and forth a little bit. So to start with, the notebooks, they don't just handle just running the code. They can also run things on the command line, like an installation. So we're gonna use a package today called requests. And so that just gives us access to all types of HTTP functions that we don't really have to think about. It gives us some error checking and a bunch of other stuff kind of built in. So if I run that, it's going to install that behind the scenes. I have a little play button over here. So none of this happens until I hit the play button. And it gives me a little bit of feedback. In my case, I'm good to go. I already have it installed. Now, I already have it installed. And if you notice up here in the corner, which is, I know it's really small for you all, but there's a specific Python environment selected for this. So this notebook allows me to run not just this code on my local machine, but this code on my local machine in an isolated environment. So I can have multiple of these environments with different versions of different packages, different versions of Python, etc. So this is just a quick example of like me taking notes along the way and why I selected these packages. That way when I hand it to Marek here, he knows what's going on. He at least knows what's coming up and why I selected them. And then I can actually do the imports of those. So he has some notes, he gets it. I can import those libraries. GetPass and JSON come with Python with I think 3.8 and above. So those are just kind of built in. I'll get into those more in a minute. And then our requests library. So everything we do today is going to be based off of those 3 libraries. And the next few slides here, I'm going to kind of get into. We're going to first handle credentials securely, and then we're going to make requests, and then we're going to continue to use that same block of code over and over again with just a few tweaks as we make different requests. So you can get pretty far with a lot of these APIs and mainframe management with just a few lines of code. So first, I don't want to show you guys my credentials. I want to log into my mainframe. And so I also don't want to type, not just for you, not just to hide it from you, but I also don't want to send it over to Miroslav. I don't want to, if I check this into GitHub or I'm storing this in a repository or another, localized server, I don't want to be passing my mainframe credentials around. Maybe we have isolated systems that only certain people are allowed to access. And so this way, I can pass the rest of the code along. And with these little get pass methods, I'm able to collect things inside of VS Code on the fly. And so if you look up at the top here, once I run this block, it gives me a little pop-up, right? And it's gonna ask me for the value. And when I type it in, it's obscured, so I'm copying and pasting these in. And 2, once I hit enter, it's actually storing that value in this variable so that I can use it through the rest of my script. And so I can do that with my URL, my username, and my password. So before I go further, so this is great for using like basic authentication. So I'm just gonna shove my username and password into my request and send it off. One question that I've been getting a lot over the past month or so as we've been doing this is well, we don't use basic authentication, that's a terrible idea. I absolutely agree. And so in the notebook I included an example of a method that I wrote that allows you to connect to the mainframe using Zowe CLI instead. So we're using the Zowe auth login API ML command. So if you have API ML set up, you're gonna run this command. We're using those same get pass variables so that we're collecting it on the fly, but then we're actually using that to grab a token from our API gateway and log in that way instead with just a little tweak in our request. So I know we're moving a little fast. This is a little more than beginner with a lot of this. Are there any questions before I go further? All right, so if I take all these, and so, great. So I have some things set up. I have some security. I have a place to work. Now I need to go out and I need to figure out what API endpoints I actually want to use to pull those resources down, manage them, and so forth. So I'm going to use the integration portal that Miroslav just showed us. I'm going to, for this demo, since I'm doing resource management, I'm going to use something that I'm familiar with and a few other folks in the room are familiar with, which is like a system state management endpoint for one of our products called Ops MVS. Now, this isn't an Ops MVS pitch or anything. I'm just using that to be able to pull those states up and down. So if you have questions about that, we got a guy in the room who's on that team. So if we have questions, just stop me along the way and we can poll him for more information. So back to our Swagger. I'm going to look down through here. I'm going to scroll down and look for my system state commands. And before I do that, what I really want to do is I want to make sure that I'm even able to access that, right? And so Ops has a little bit of not a heartbeat, a health check, right? So I want to make sure that it's online, that I'm able to access it. Just want to make a simple request. I'm not interested in doing anything yet, other than making sure the service is online. So I'm going to grab my little status API endpoint. And those are becoming more common in a lot of published APIs where you want to check to make sure the service is online, make sure what pieces of that service are available, and you can either pull that or just hit it every once in a while as needed. So if I grab my status here, and so I have my mainframe URL that I collected a minute ago in that secure manner, and I'm going to concatenate that together with the API endpoint that I just pulled from Swagger. And then I'm going to run that URL along with my username and password that I had earlier. And then I'm going to get that from the server. I'm asking the server just for that information. So this is all I need to make a request to my mainframe. So if I run that, I'm going to print out the results here. So if I run that, I can see, it gives me my API version number, when it was released, and that it's available. So this is kind of the skeleton for the rest of the talk, right? All we're doing is asking for information, bringing it down, and then giving information back to the mainframe, sending data back to the mainframe to make changes in that environment.
Yes. Now we would like to get some feedback from you because we're building this for you so it's as easy to use as possible. And we would like to hear some of your running feedback. So since you were with us, you were looking at it, maybe you could compare it with what you already tried out, what you did. So how would you say that submitting a request to mainframe API, how easy was it,
Yeah, because I just said it was easy, but we all know how that goes when we go back and try to type the code in that the presenter gave you and it's just supposed to work, right?
So let's start more with the tough answer. So very difficult. Who thinks that? And no, it's fine. Oh, it's difficult. It's still not easy, not for everyone. Fine. Neutral. You're getting there. Okay. Thank you. Easy. Feel like I'm getting it in my hand. And very easy. I can do it. Anytime.
You want to come up and finish? Yeah.
Oh, there'll be a small test, on the session.
All right, so we hit our first endpoint. The service is up and running. I'm confident that I can go get another endpoint. And so this time, I'm gonna go back to my Swagger. I'm using that to kind of guide me along the way, and I'm gonna pull out my resources, right? And so I'm gonna grab that URL and I'm gonna take it back into my Python script here. I take this code. All I'm really doing is bringing it down and adding just a little bit, right? I just need a few more items. I need to know what resource that I'm actually looking for with this endpoint. I'm still, concatenating the URL that I used, that I defined up above privately. I'm still using my same get requests. I realize this is time, I apologize. We have a URL, and we still have our authorization with our username and password. The only thing I'm adding for this particular one is some parameters, right? Which adds that resource that we saw at the very beginning into a parameter before it submits it. So just slowly building up here, a little bit at a time, from the basics, showing us how we can manipulate those endpoints just a little bit. And so when I run this, what I get back is I'm printing out an array here of the resources that have found that matched my resource name. So in my case, I only have one that's currently running, and that's here. And if I scroll just a little bit to the right, I can see what this started task is actually, or resource is actually has as a prerequisite. So these two tasks need to be started in order to run this one. So what this is, and maybe Craig could describe this a little better than me, but what this is doing is we're starting and stopping resources on the mainframe. It's going out and saying, hey, if I take this down and want to bring it back up, are these things available? These are required to run this resource here. Are they up? If they're not, we need to handle that. You want to add any details?
Oh, that's great.
All right.
Is that checking every table? That's more for you. Is it checking every RDF table for that resource? Or every SSM table?
To grab the resources endpoint.
Yeah.
They must be.
Yeah, so it'll give me the prerequisites for that, and then it'll give me the current state of that as well. So it'll show me, hey, this thing's online right now. So for our demo, we want to bring that down, right? We want to take it offline, we want to let our guy apply maintenance, and then we want to bring it back up. So I've used the status endpoint so far. I went out and I grabbed my resources endpoint, defining the resource. And so now I want to actually make a state change. And so this is this is where things change a little bit, right? So far, we've been looking at these little blue boxes that are getting information, read-only if you will, from the mainframe and bringing it down. We haven't really impacted the mainframe in any way. We haven't done anything with any resources that are there. So with this one, we have a put command. So we're putting data from our machine and sending that up to the mainframe to make it do something else, right? So this is the first time that we're doing that. So we need a couple of more parameters. We need the resource, and then we need the table it's associated with. And so Craig provided me with those ahead of time, just to make sure that I was on the right path here. And so we're, again, same requests as above, we're just continuing to add little bits along the way. And so this time, we're adding another variable to handle our table. We're leaving our resource name the same. And then what we're actually doing is we're, based on what we saw in the previous step, we need to send those parameters as part of the URL, which is a little twist, right? So we can actually continue to add these variables onto the end of the URL, and so that we can do the put request. So we're pulling our URL down, we're sending along our authorization, and this is where things get a little interesting, because we saw that the current state of that resource was up on the mainframe. We want to bring it down for maintenance. And so now we have this data, or this payload that we're sending along. Not just little parameters looking for things, we're actually sending data to the mainframe. And so if I submit that, if it runs successfully, I get a response. It accepted the data that I sent to bring the resource down, and it's telling me that the current state is now down. It has brought the resource down on the mainframe, right? And so, just to jump out real quick, I had another friend kind of log in here and grab this screen for me. This is the equivalent of, this is giving me all the data that I can also get through the API. But I just wanted a gut check, right? I wanted to see in ISP in the green screen, that my resource was actually down, right? And by the way, I also have 2 others that are down as well. So now I'm offline, right? Those services aren't active in that environment anymore, right? So the same request that we just sent, I didn't go back to Swagger because I'm really just running the same request, right? We'll imagine a little bit of time has passed, the maintenance bit has been applied, and now we're ready to bring this back up programmatically, right? The only change we need here is changing the desired state from down to up, right? We're just flipping that, sending it back over. However, if you notice the other 2 services were down, now our prereqs are up either, right? And so this time, I'm gonna get an error. And depending on, what I submit, I could get a couple of different errors, but this one's saying, hey, we're getting nothing. So, this is where our third-party API comes in. In the real world, if this was happening, and this was all running behind the scenes, and I wasn't really executing this manually, and this was just part of a script that was running, I would want somebody to do something about that. I'm just the maintenance guy. I don't want to have to manage these resources that maybe I'm not responsible for. And so what I'm going to do is, again, using nearly all the same code, but with a different payload, a different set of data, a different URL and some different credentials, right? But using nearly the exact same code, I'm going to send the error information off to ServiceNow so that I can notify the guy that's responsible for this that he needs to do something for me, right? So we need to, new variables here. These aren't mainframe, but these are my ServiceNow variables. I'm collecting that same level of secure data, username, password, URL. I'm pulling together the URL, submitting this to the incidents table in ServiceNow. I just typed this out to be clear, but these could all be variable based on the error that you received, right? These could be filled in dynamically based on the information that you're getting back. Taking all of that and putting it in my request, and then we're going to print out our results here. So I'm gonna execute this, and in this case, it's running. Takes a few seconds here. Ooh, I went too far. And in this case, I'm just reporting out the status code. I don't really need all the data. And so my HTTP status code comes back and says, hey, 201, it's created, we're good to go. If you get another error, like a 504 or something, or a 501, maybe you're submitting the wrong data, something's maybe malformed, and so you want to check kind of like the payload that you're sending along. You might want to check your credentials if you're getting some unauthorized errors as well. So now that it's created, if I bounce over to my developer instance and I refresh my page, I get a new incident at the top of the table, which tells me my mainframe resources are down up at the top here. And I can click into that and I can see all of the information that I sent over in my request inside of the ServiceNow table, right? So I think we're getting pretty close to the end here. Maybe we're a few minutes over. So behind the scenes, I brought my dependent services back up magically. You know, somebody magically fixed those behind the scenes for me. And I can take that same request that I sent earlier, except this time, since my resources are up and I execute it, I can see that it did what it was supposed to do and it came back up, right? And then if I want to verify, if I just want to gut check myself, I can see that all my resources are up and they're currently up. So,
Yes. Now again, because you know this shouldn't be so much just about us, but mainly about you. So what we pictured here now, we feel like you know that it should be like very doable, but we wanted to get some real life check from you. So do you see any barriers, showstoppers, like any reasons like, hey guys, you know, what a great session, but you know, this isn't going to work, you know, in our shop. Do you see guys like any showstoppers, barriers, anything that comes to your mind that could stop your plans?
MFA?
here we go. Yeah,
Okay.
That's a good one.
Anything else?
And if it's not a showstopper, what's the next step for you guys after this, right? Like if you're starting to automate some of this, you're starting to pull these scripts together, you're doing dynamic authentication, you're managing these types of resources or using other APIs, what's the next step beyond that is a roadblock or a barrier?
To get people to adopt it is the main thing.
That is why we're here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It can take a while to get stuff like Zowe and whatever actually installed.
Yeah, getting it laid down and getting everybody trained how to use it. Yeah.
Because they want to check everything that's going on with it, and then before you know it, 12 months has gone by and you've only done one test up on. So
Yeah. That's good. That's a good one.
There are many things that can delay the process itself, like firewall openings, lack of knowledge on administrator side who works with service, not probably there, like not aware how to set up REST API Explorer in service now. I don't know if it's built in or it comes as extension. Then if you don't have access yourself, it becomes very painful to send tickets, requests, and get assist. For that, it can take, I don't know, 3 to 6 months to get it working. Plus Python installation on USS side as well.
For me, one of the problems is that there isn't a barrier to stop people doing this. You know, a human can sit at a screen and ask for data at a certain rate, whereas a human can write a program that will destroy your system by asking for everything it possibly can all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And without an appropriate API gateway to
Yeah, you're just flooding your pipes with
Yeah.
maybe nonsense even, right? Things you can't even take action on or use. Yeah.
It brings me to a question, have you seen, for example, some strange behaviors when you start using your REST API request too often towards the same service now to retrieve some reports, like incidents or something? Or when it simply blocks your system from mainframe side and thinks that it's possible attack towards servers.
You got me on that one.
I just, I have seen it in
Yeah.
practice, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a good one, man.
If you're integrated to the mediation now, there's a rate limiting capability in
Yeah,
mediation.
I think it's actually between firewall setup, it's just is noticing like as unusual bandwidth and stops you for a while. Like, okay, it's enough. We are too often requesting information from another system,
Right.
which again becomes a problem because we need the report now, and we are sending like many requests towards each entry separate. It builds like based on what it finds. So we are putting a filter towards service now based on values in incident fields, change fields. For example, it can be service over, which belongs to our team. It can be a cost center number, whatever. And we are using those parameters, and then suddenly, boom, we start the system. We can just read what we want. How to bypass it? Put a simple delay between every single result that comes to us, and then we wait half day.
Yeah.
I mean, for like nefarious activity, like network activity on systems, there are like network monitoring solutions. Like, and other vendors have products as well, which is speaking for NetMaster. Like API mediation layers open on one port on the system, so you could analyze traffic going through that port, and then if it went out of a certain band, you could alert on such a phenomenon. The other thing you can do with some of these monitoring products is sometimes if you have a nefarious actor, they'll be trying to access ports that don't have listeners on them. Like they don't have servers, and they're just trying to find a server within your network, and you can alert on activity like that as well. Just a couple options you could explore.
This still brings back everything for the beginning. Like support cases that you send to another team and ask for assistance. Please set up this and that, and it delays.
Right.
So,
My
but the
advice,
solution is there.
yeah, my advice for most modernization activities within your organization is to start small, pick some high value use cases and try to get one thing implemented, and then let that momentum build. That's typically where we see success happen.
So I think we're a little over time, potentially. The deck has a bunch of resources. There's links in here. There's also the name and place of additional sessions that kind of off of what we've already talked about today. I think this one, NN, so REST APIs to manage startup tasks. Is that you, Craig? Is that tomorrow? Okay, all right. So it's another ops person. And then, we have some Mainframe infrastructure and open telemetry ones. I think this one just happened. But a lot of the things that we showed at the beginning, anything that we have as a Zowe CLI plugin, we also have, we should also have an Ansible collection as well to use that, I think, right? So there's a link here to those collections. More resources, the repos we used today, some of the other links we mentioned, and additional education resources. So that's it. If you have questions, come up and we can talk more.